Grammar questions on the SAT don't exist to trick you. They exist to test patterns and logic. And once you understand those patterns, you start solving grammar questions not by memorizing every rule, but by eliminating wrong answers like a strategist. That is how high scorers think, that is how high scores happen. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down 10 simple, reliable grammar hacks that top scorers use with examples, reasoning, and the why behind each method. Grammar questions on the SAT don't exist to trick you, they exist to test patterns and logic. And once you understand those patterns, you start solving grammar questions not by memorizing every rule, but by eliminating wrong answers like a strategist. That is how high scorers think. That is how high scores happen. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down 10 simple, reliable grammar hacks that top scorers use with examples, reasoning, and the why behind each method. By the end of this video, you will have a clear plan to attack grammar questions with confidence and precision. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mohini. I'm the founder of Test Maestro. I've been an SAT English strategist over a decade now, helping students break the 700 barrier through structured and pattern-based strategies. As we go through these grammar strategies, I want you to actively work alongside me and take your own notes. To help you do that, I've included a link in the description to the document I'm using in this lesson. You can download your own copy and follow along step by step. Before we begin, drop a comment below and let me know what your biggest challenges are in the digital SAT English module. Are you struggling with specific grammar concepts, or are you running out of time? If time management is holding you back, this video is going to be especially valuable for you. Now let's see the first hack. The first hack is when we have two options that are identical in meaning, right? So what does that really mean? You can only have one correct choice, right? But if you've got two correct choices, you can only have one correct choice, right? But if you have two options which have the same meaning, it means both the options need to be eliminated. Look at this, choice C and D. Semicolon and a period, they have exactly the same usage, right? We use a semicolon when we want to break down two complete sentences, when we want to separate them. And we use period for the same reason, which means we could easily eliminate choices C and D over here. Now you're left with choice A and B. So let's read the entire sentence that is in question. When viewed up close, however, the portraits reveal themselves to be quilts and the stitching barely visible among the thousands of pieces of printed microcut fabric. Now, as you read the part after and, you must have realized that this is not a complete sentence. So you can definitely not go with choice A as well because the comma fanboys rule, right? What is the option you're left with? You're left with B, and that is your correct answer. You can definitely place a comma in between one complete and one incomplete sentence. So B is the correct choice. Now let's see the second hack. If you see a semicolon, it can be for a series too. Now in the previous hack, we saw how a semicolon and period are interchangeable. But sometimes a semicolon can also be used in a series. How will I know if that's being used in a series? If in the sentence in question you find an and you find a semicolon before and, you should know that they are using the semicolon over here to separate the items from each other in a series. That is the only reason why you can have a semicolon before and. Now with this understanding, let us go ahead and look at the choices. So you've got a couple of choices, right? I mean, there are semicolons here, there are two commas over here. Now we need to figure out what do we need. Correct? For that, you need to understand this is a series, and so you have to see how this series has been framed. So look at one of the items in the series and see how that's been framed. So they've got some language course in some place in 2015. So basically, the item in the series is ending with an year, and there is the name or some information given about that particular place, or the app that they have been talking about before the year, right? So basically with that information, if you look at this particular choice C, you've got Chicksaw Basic in 2009. These are the years, right? So what am I looking for? I'm looking for a semicolon after the year so that I can separate it from the next item, right? The items in this series is ending with a year, so I'm looking for a semicolon after the year. And the only option doing that is choice C. There you go. So here the semicolon is used for series. We have to understand how the series or the items have been structured in this series. Here it's about years. The item in the series is ending with a year, so I have to make sure that this item is also ending with an year, which is only happening in choice C. Now let's see the next hack. When a description comes before the name, you don't place a comma before it, right? So if you look at your options, you've got comma, comma, no comma, no comma, right? So let's read the sentence. Critics have noted the way pioneering playwright W.Y. compares the experience of I and N. So basically, we've got the name and we've got some description of this person before it, right? And what does the rule say? The hack is that when there is a name and there's a description before it, you will not separate them with the help of comma. So there you go, you eliminate A, B, because there are commas before the name. Now you've got two choices. Both of them don't have a comma in between the description and the name, but one of them has a comma after the name. So do we go ahead with a comma or not? So as per the rule, what do we know? We never separate the subject and the verb with a comma, right? So WY is the subject who's comparing. So compares the experience. This person compares the experience. So we've got the verb over here. This is the subject. So we've got to eliminate this. We can't place a comma between the subject and the verb. So you're left with D and that's your answer. Let's see the fourth hack. Odd one out is going to be correct. So when I say this, what I'm trying to say is that find the option that is the odd one, right? Just don't straight away pick it up, but maybe just find which out of these options is the odd one and then accordingly choose. Then accordingly be careful with your elimination, right? So here, if you look at your choices, are identifying, this is plural. Identify is plural. Have is plural. Identifies is the only singular choice that you have. So if I have to eliminate this particular option, I'm going to be very careful, right? So in a subject, this is basically now if you're well versed with the grammar, you know that there's a subject verb agreement question, right? So let's read the sentence and identify what verb do I need. Do I need a singular one or the plural one? So now if you're falling out of time and you're able to see that this is the odd one, pick this up, eliminate the rest of them, right? So are, identify, have, they all are incorrect. Pick the one that is the odd one and go ahead. Let's see the next hack. If only one separates two complete sentences, then probably the correct one. What do I mean by this? Like if you look at your choices and if there's only one option which is separating two complete sentences, right? Which has a punctuation that separates two complete sentences, it means that is probably the correct choice. Now, if you look at A, B, C, D, A has a comma, it is not separating two complete sentences. Just an and without a comma before it is also not separating. No punctuation and then a period. So this is the correct answer. Now, just to like double check or cross check, let us go ahead and read the sentence over here. American writer E.D., who emigrated from H in 1981, has won acclaim for her powerful short stories, novels, and essays. So that seems to be like one complete sentence. Now, if the sentence starts from praising, let's read from there. Praising her lyrical yet unflinching depictions of her native country's turbulent history, writer Robert Antoni has compared. So clearly, this is one complete sentence and the previous sentence ends at essays, right? If you again, if you notice, the structure of the next sentence, that is praising her lyrical blah blah blah, is such. You've got some information, you've got some extra information, and then there is the subject over here, right? Who is praising her lyrical yet unflinching depictions? Robert Antony, right? So these are two complete sentences. Like we had guessed, choice D is the right answer. So again, this is another grammar hack that you can remember. So grammar hack 6, if you find one dash in the text and the other in the options, you probably need to pick up the one which has the dash, right? So let's say I'm just scanning through my options right now and I find two options with dashes over here, correct? What am I going to do? I'm going to quickly look at my text and especially the sentence in question and see if I already have a dash, right? So Milkman's research can thus address anomalies that neoclassical economic models some information, and then if you have a dash over here, there's a dash, and then there is another dash. This is not the dash that I want to consider because this is the dash separating a word, right? So decision makers is like one word, and there they have used this one. But the dash that I'm looking for is after the decision makers. So there's already one dash. Most probably your correct answer is going to have another dash. How do I check this? So let me quickly check with A. If I eliminate this whole information, do I still have a logical and a meaningful sentence? Let's read this. Milkman's research can thus address anomalies that neoclassical economic models cannot explain. So I definitely have one complete logical and grammatically correct sentence. So A is the correct choice. All the other options are wrong, and I will definitely not place the dash after the which, right? So D is out. If the dash has to be placed, it has to be placed before the which. So A is clearly the correct answer. Now let's see the next one. Pick the only non-verb dash ing option. So if you have your choices, right, and there's only one option which has an ing word not presented as a verb, that is most probably going to be the correct answer, right? Now look at your choices over here. Is intending. So when is an ing ending word a verb? When there's a helping verb before it. So this is a verb, correct? Intends is a verb. Intending without any helping verb before it is a non-verb option, and intends is again a verb. So the only non-verb option, ing option you've got is choice C, and that is the correct choice. Now again, to cross-check, let's read the sentence. American abstract artist RS, and then you've got intending his installations to make passerbys keenly aware of how one's movements are affected by the physical features of one's environment. Then there's a comma. Assembles. Now what is this assembles? This is the verb to the subject RS, right? So if you remove this whole information, there's a comma here, there's another comma here. If you remove this whole information from this text, what are you left with? American abstract artist RS assembles large-scale steel plates. That makes sense. So this is the subject, this is the verb. You definitely don't need another verb, so you will eliminate all the choices with verbs in them. And you've got ing here, which is not acting as a verb, so this is the correct choice. So again, this is the hack that you can remember. If you have your choices, there's one option that is ing option and it is non-verb. That is going to be the correct one. All of them are verbs, but there's only one non-verb option. Choose that one. Let's look at the next hack. Blank immediately after the first comma in the sentence. So what is it trying to say? We have seen one such question just now. We saw the structure of the sentence, which was basically some information before the comma, and then we have the subject. So when do I know, or how do I know that I'm dealing with this and this hack would work over here? I will know it when the blank is immediately after the comma, right? So, and also one more thing, very important. If you look at your choices, they all are using almost the same verbs, but they are all jumbled up, right? So Henry resumed his reign, the reign of Henry resumed, Henry's reign resumed. They're almost using the same words, right? It's just that they are all jumbled up, right? You don't know like which structure to follow. In such a case, what are we going to do? We're going to read the part before the comma. Upon recovering 2 years later. Now ask a very logical question to yourself. You need the subject after the comma, right? So ask a very logical question. Who is recovering? Or what are we talking about? So here it's about recovering 2 years later, which should be about a human. And so the question is, who is recovering 2 years later? And so, if I want a subject right after the comma, I need the subject to be a person that is immediately after the comma. The only option that is placing a human's name is choice A, right? And that is the correct choice. The rain is not recovering. Henry apostrophe S rain is also still talking about the rain and not Henry. When there's an apostrophe involved, it's not Henry that we're talking about rain, right? So rain is not recovering, BC are out, then you're left with D. It is again, it's not talking about the person who was recovering. So clearly choice A is the right answer. Now let's look at another hack. If both punctuation and transition are tested, check the meaning. Now this is a latest addition, and this is basically kind of complicated because now you're not just being tested on punctuation, you're also being tested in your understanding of transition. So here you basically need to understand the meaning of the sentence, right? Now, how will I know that I'm dealing with such a question type? If you've got transitions in your options, right? Especially the contradictory one. So if you've got though in all the choices, and the only things that changes is the punctuation, right? So semicolon comes here, which means is this sentence ending after though? If the semicolon is before though, it means is the next starting with the though, right? So this is what you need to figure out. And how can you figure that out? You have to understand the meaning of the sentence and the sentence before it or after it, right? So let's read the text over here. Recent analysis of some tea has determined its color to be gray, suggesting an icy composition. So some recent analysis and its color has to be gray, suggesting an icy composition, right? Okay. Such interpretations are ultimately speculative, right? Now, what is the relationship between this sentence and this sentence? There is some recent analysis and they have come up with a conclusion, right? That the color is to be gray and it suggests an icy composition, correct? Now, the next sentence says that such interpretations are ultimately speculative. So, what does that mean? They're kind of contradicting, right? So, you just told me what the conclusion is, and now you're telling me that it's speculative. So, ideally, it shouldn't be speculative. You should be sure about it, right? But because it is not sure about it, it is speculative, they are contradicting each other. Now, because they're contradicting each other, where do I want my though to be placed? Though has to be a part of this sentence. To just be very sure about it, you can go ahead and read the next part. The object's gray coloration may be an incidental effect of radiation, solar wind, or collisions with other objects. Now, what is this part doing? It's basically explaining why it is speculative, right? So this is definitely not contradicting this speculative information. So definitely, though is not going to be a part of this sentence because there is no contradiction between sentences 2 and 3. The contradiction is between sentence 1 and 2. So clearly, though has to be a part of the second sentence, which is happening in choice B, right? Because the semicolon is after though. If the semicolon is after though, it means that though is a part of the second sentence and not the third. It means that the contradiction is between sentence 1 and 2 and not between 2 and 3. If I pick up choice C, right, what would that mean? It basically means that the contradiction is between such interpretations and this particular sentence, which is not making sense logically, correct? So clearly, choice B is the only option that makes sense, and A is any which way is incorrect. You don't use the contradictory connector though and a comma like this, right? So either you'll start a sentence with though, so in that case it will be THUGH comma, right? You'll end the sentence with though, so THOUGH period, so comma period, sentence starting, that is period and a comma, or you can have a semicolon and a comma, or a comma and a semicolon. You can also have two commas, right? You can have though in between two commas. But when can you have the though in between two commas? Only when you remove it and the sentence still makes sense. So if you read this, such interpretations are ultimately speculative. The object's gray coloration may be seen, may be an incidental effect, which doesn't make sense. These are like two complete sentences and they need to be separated. So though in between these two complete sentences, in between two commas, doesn't make sense, right? So clearly choice B is the right answer. Now this is the latest addition, so be very careful when you come across such a question type on the test or even when you're practicing, right? So how do we know that we're going to deal with it? When there's a contradictory connector in all the options and the only thing that changes is the punctuation around it. Now let's see the last grammar hack, comparison words with that. Again, you have to look at the sentence that is in question for this one. Compared with that of a highly concentrated market, there's some non-essential information which I'm not going to read, right? So compared with that of a highly concentrated market, what are we comparing? Something of a highly concentrated market, right? So we need that something to be placed after this. Why? Because only that has been compared, right? So let's say whatever this information is, whatever this word is that we place here, should basically be the that they are referring to, right? The comparison is between something of a highly concentrated market, not two markets. And for that reason, I'm going to eliminate A. If I say a market over here, it basically means that something of a market is being compared with a market, which is illogical. Whenever we make a comparison, both the things that we are comparing should be comparable, right? So here something that of a highly concentrated market means I have to compare something of a market and not the market themselves, right? So when is again irrelevant, that's not telling me what that is talking about. A less concentrated market is again about a market, right? So I'm not comparing two markets, I'm comparing something of a market. And only choice B makes sense, the HHI score of a less concentrated market. So that is basically referring to HHI. So this has to be correct. So here the hack is when you see a comparison and you see the word that, look for what that can be referred to, right? What is it referring to? And that should be the correct answer. Now with this understanding, I hope it helps you in attempting these questions in a much better way. You'll be able to save up a lot of time with these hacks being handy. Now, I just have one disclaimer to give. Here's how you should approach this. Use these grammar strategies on your first pass through the module. Move efficiently, don't overthink what is meant to be straightforward. If you manage your time well, you will create space to return and double check the grammar later. That second look is powerful, but only if you have earned it by being systematic the first time. The real advantage of mastering grammar is this: it frees up mental bandwidth, right? When grammar becomes quick and automatic, you have more time and calm energy to focus on the reading texts, where most students feel pressure. So start with a structured first pass, then, if time allows, revisit strategically. Accuracy first, efficiency next, calm always. I hope it helps.